In this video, our SAP Analytics Cloud product experts will demonstrate the main features of our new release. Feel free to jump straight to the features you're interested in by using the timestamps in the description below. Let's dive in and hear from our SAP Analytics Cloud product experts.
Hello, I'm Adrian, a product manager with SAP Analytics Cloud. I'd like to introduce a new feature to allow administrators to set a permission that allows delegated administrators to view and edit all connections in a tenant. This new permission will allow administrators to manage connections created by other users so they can view, edit, share, or delete the connection even when the connection owner is unavailable. Now, there is a new permission in the connections to allow that connection to be managed for delegated administrators. Administrators can now view the team a user belongs to through the user administration page in SAP Analytics Cloud. When selecting a user from the Security Users section, when I select the user, I can also see the teams that this user is a member of.
Hi, my name is Thomas Feri. I'm a product manager for SAP Analytics Cloud and here to present a new feature for administration and service management. We introduced a performance benchmark that allows users to benchmark their client hardware as well as their network performance to the SAP Analytics Cloud service. The performance benchmark is structured in the system benchmark, which measures the client's JavaScript engine's performance, and the network test that measures the network latency, upload and download speed to the SAP Analytics Cloud service. Let's have a look at the system. You will find the performance benchmark in the side menu of SAC under System and then in a new performance group under Performance and then Benchmark Tool. You can run a client test to benchmark your system score. Click on the system benchmark result, opens a pop-up with the client ratings where you can categorize your score. You can also run a network test to measure the latency, upload and download speed to SAP Analytics Cloud service.
Hi, my name is Anna and I'm a product manager for SAP Analytics Cloud, here to present the new features for Catalog. Now search and filters are saved across sessions. So when the user types something in the Catalog search bar, selects some filters, and then logs out of the SAP Analytics Cloud, all this information is saved. After logging back into the system, the user can see the same search and filters applied to Catalog as in the previous session. Here I have Catalog open. Let's try adding a filter for a quarter. For example, I'll select Q2. And then let's add a search for marketing. Here we have these marketing trends appear in Catalog search results. Now let's sign out of the system. When we sign back in, we can see exact same page appears with the filter and search still applied. Users who have permission to publish content to Catalog can now manage access directly from the Catalog card details. There is a Manage button on Catalog card now that invokes the publishing dialog. This improvement makes it faster for users to publish a resource to Catalog. They no longer need to search for a resource in files. Instead, they can open a publish dialog straight from Catalog card and select new teams to share the resource with. Here I have Catalog open. Let's open one of the Catalog cards, and here's a new Manage button. Here in this window, we can see the teams that this resource is published to. It's already published to marketing team. And we can search for another team, for example, admin, and publish this resource to the admin team so it's visible for them in Catalog.
Hello, my name is Derek Johnson. I'm a product manager for SAP Analytics Cloud, and I'm here to present on the topic of flexible modeling with time dimensions. So with the new enhancement, we're able to now do weekly time planning within the new model. And there's some enhancements that we're going to be seeing where we can configure the weekly time pattern, and which will include 53rd week support. And then we can extend this to user managed time, where we can add additional members, properties, and hierarchies. So let's take a look. So now we're going to look at our scenarios. We're going to take a quick look at configuration and then some examples of how we can take advantage of this configuration in time. So the first thing we're going to do is look at our date dimension that we've added to our new model. If we want to configure our date dimension here, it's very simple. We can select our model preferences from the date dimension or do that directly from the model, in which case we can now select our weekly time and we can see our weekly time patterns. And then we have our start conditions for defining how we'd like the year to start. And if we'd like to set a fiscal offset, we can do that as well. So once we're happy with our configuration, we can just refresh the data and we can see both the members as well as the associated properties. In addition to that, if we'd like to see at a different direct time granularity, we can do that as here, as shown. We have calendar week for our time granularity. So this is system managed time. If we want to convert to user managed time, we can do that directly from the date dimension here as well. This is a one-time operation, so once you save the model, you cannot revert back to system managed time. But the advantage here is that we can now add additional members. This is really very similar to all of our other dimensions and managing them as well. And in addition to that, we can add hierarchies. So this is going to be level-based hierarchies. We're going to take a look at this when we add special periods in one of our scenarios. And we can add additional properties in here as well. And we're going to take advantage of this when we add events such as holidays, number of days the store is open versus number of days in a calendar week. So we'll take a look at all this configuration here, but just know that by having user managed time, it greatly enhances the flexibility here as well. And if you do need to, you can generate new members here as well. So if you're looking at a particular calendar year, you can extend that to additional calendar years as well. But any special members you would need to configure. So how do we take advantage of this? We'll just kind of show a few examples pretty quickly. So here we're going to be adding special periods. We've created a custom hierarchy. Here, this is a case where we may be planning in periods 1 through 12, but we have a special period that we'd like to show for closing activities. And we could have also added a opening period here as well for an opening balance. So here you can just start to see our 1, special member, and 2, an additional hierarchy roll up. So if we look at our next scenario, this is a case where we're extending our date dimension to include events such as a holiday. This may be something like Easter, which doesn't fall on the same calendar day or week year over year. And we may want to look at our sales and also to give a comparative sales as if the store was open. So we're taking into account the days in week and the store's number of days the store is open that week. And we're kind of adjusting these values. So this gives us a week over week comparison if we'd like, and we can also see our sales for this particular holiday. And really the last scenario that we'd like to cover is going to be how do we move data between different models here as well. So this is all pretty simple based on some enhancements we've done. We have, in this case, we're looking at a financial plan that's stored at a periodic level. And then we want to move our, in this case, sales targets maybe down to a weekly model at the store level. And we can do this through the cross-copy model action. And this is all going to be driven off of this date dimension in both of these models. And we're essentially going to be taking our P1 value based on this date. It'll be at the end of the month. And that'll correspond to week 4, which is the last week of this month here as well. And you can see that the dates would align, which would be January 29th would be the last day of this week. And if we want to take a look at the configuration here, we can look at our cross model copy action and look for our date dimension here. And we can see that we have the options for mapping it to the first day of the time period or the last day. In this case, we chose the last day of the time period, which is why we have the associated mapping. So please take a look at flexible time in both system managed time and user managed time, as I think this will greatly expand the scenarios we can cover as part of planning. Thank you.
Hello, my name is David Stocker. I'm a product manager for SAP Analytics Cloud, and I'm going to demonstrate the new import into local dimensions capability. Now you can import data into local dimensions, so master data into local dimensions, in addition to importing data into fact tables during import jobs. This supports local dimension members as well as updating dimension member properties. And it supports adding new versions for version dimensions in planning models. Previously, you either had to maintain all of your dimension members manually in the model prior to importing, or you had to use public dimensions, which could also have their own import jobs. So let's have a look at it in action. Here we have a very simple model designed for containing visitation data in United States national parks. It's a simple model with a single measure, visitors. It has a date dimension, and it has 3 generic dimensions. Park type is a local dimension that is fully maintained already. State with region is a public dimension with a parent-child hierarchy. It's also already been maintained for us. In fact, it's maintained with a load job. And we have the park dimension, which is a local dimension, and it is a local dimension currently with no data maintained, so no IDs and no descriptions. Normally, or previously, this would be an impediment to us loading any data into this model. We would have to pre-fill this, but we don't need to do this now. So let's go and we'll have a look at a load job. Let's go to the second tab because it already has the wrangling job open. It's been wrangled, it's been mapped, and now we are in properties mapping. Recall that the park dimension is completely empty for both member ID and description. We have already mapped the unit code column to the ID, so we have the 4-letter unit codes. And we will now map the colloquial park name to the description. So in this particular case, we are filling both the ID and the description of the local dimension during the load job. And we click next. So now we're in the import review. We can see that we're going to have some rejected records because of unmaintained state values, but that's not really an issue here. We'll go ahead and run the import anyway. And we can see the data has now been imported. Let's go and have a look at our fact data. Go back to the model structure. We can see that we now have a filled fact table. Let's have a look at the park dimension. Remember, it was empty when we started this exercise, and now we can see that we have 367 new entries in the park dimension, both for the member ID and for the description. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pranav, and I'm a product manager for SAP Analytics Cloud. Here I am to present a feature in scheduling publication, which is dynamic text. User can now insert a dynamic text into an email subject, message body, or the file name. And these dynamic text could be date, time, month, or year. So schedule generally runs on a recurrent basis, and based on the runtime, these data would be populated in the appropriate location. Let's go to the demo. This is the story which I'll be scheduling, and I'll be scheduling on a monthly recurrence. So I'll go to a schedule workflow. By default, it takes as the current time, but I will have an option to define my recurrence pattern. So there are different recurrence which is available. For this demo, I'll use a monthly recurrence, and I'll say run every month, and it is first of every month. Now this is my recurrence pattern, and hence I'll not be able to provide one date. So sales for the month. Since this would be running in a recurrent way, if I use this dynamic text as a monthly recurrence, it will populate a data. So when it runs in May, it would populate sales for the month of May. Similarly, when it runs in June, it would populate accordingly. And now I will have in the email message also, I can do the same timestamp, and I can mention a time at which it would be running. So whatever time the schedule would run, it will fetch your data according on that time. So I can mention a timestamp over here. Now I also have this a file name where you can use a dynamic text sales for the month, and then these are the places where you can use the dynamic text, and when the schedule would run, these data would be populated accordingly dynamically and then deliver it to a user. So this is about a dynamic text in the scheduling workflow. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Tanir Kapil and I'm a product expert for SAP Analytics Cloud. In the past, many of you may have used optimized view mode in order to improve the usability and performance of dashboards within SAP Analytics Cloud. Since then, we've recognized the importance of providing a similar experience to the story designer. And with this, we're proud to introduce the optimized design experience, which will be made available in the 2022 Q2 QRC. Within the optimized design experience, you will be exposed to the same set of usability improvements that you're familiar with from optimized view mode. These include the improved ghost loading indicators, the improved tooltip interactivity, and many more. Within the optimized design experience, we've introduced additional usability improvements, such as a brand new chart builder panel, as well as the available object list and design time undo redo. Once you are within the optimized design experience, you will get a seamless transition between both edit and view mode. And while in view mode, you benefit from optimized view mode. There are two ways you can enter optimized design experience. You could either create a brand new story or convert existing content into the optimized design experience. With this, let's see how this looks like directly within SAP Analytics Cloud. So right now, I'm currently within my file repository. So you'll notice I have several stories, but in my case, I'm interested in creating a brand new story. So let's go to the Stories module and click on Canvas page. Once I click on Canvas page, I'm prompted a dialog to be able to select which experience I want to enter in. In my case, I'm interested in the optimized design experience, but please note that while this is the initial release, there may be certain functionalities that may not be made available. Once within the optimized design experience, I have the same entry points that you may be familiar with. So in this case, I'm going to click on Chart, and I'm going to select my data model. So while this is an initial release, we are going to be releasing incremental updates towards the optimized design experience. So rest assured, we will unlock functionality wave by wave. As soon as I insert a chart, you will notice a few usability improvements. So we now have an improved ghost state for our charts where you can see which type of chart type you've selected, plus the message right below. On the right, I have a brand new chart builder panel, and we've made several improvements. So let's go through a few of them. The first one is when I select on a chart type, you will notice we've consolidated all chart types under a single menu. So it's easier for you to find the desired visualization. In addition, as I click on Add Measure, you will notice we've expanded our drop-down menu. So it's easier for you to navigate through large, complex data models. In addition, we've also reorganized some of the categories. So now it's easier for you to create a brand new calculation or add an input control. In my case, I'm interested in adding headcount, so let's add that to the visualization. As soon as I select on headcount, you'll notice I get the live ghost loading indicator update, and I can see my chart being built in real time. Instead of having to click on the drop-down menu to collapse it, I can now click anywhere on my dashboard to collapse this drop-down menu. In addition, we've introduced what we call the available objects. So as I click on the available object list, you will notice that I'm provided every single object that exists as part of my data model. In this case, let's go navigate towards our dimensions. It's as simple as collapsing measures, and I'm exposed to the list of dimensions that are made available. As I'm interested in adding a dimension such as career level, I have two ways of doing so. I could either click on the more action icon to quickly map it to an existing dimension or a dimension field, or I can simply drag and drop the dimension directly into my builder panel and see that real-time update. The last improvement that you may have noticed is our chart add-ons. We've now added the chart add-ons to the bottom of the builder panel, so it's easier to find the desired chart add-on that you want to use. I'm going to go ahead and collapse my designer, and a lot of the times I've seen a lot of customers redesign their charts by resizing, and sometimes you by mistake delete an object that you didn't intend to. With Optimized Design Experience, we've now introduced undo redo support. So I can use Ctrl-Z on my keyboard to quickly undo an action such as my deletion and my resize. Or if I wanted to use the icons within the toolbar, I could quickly undo an action such as my mapping of career level. Similarly, I could quickly redo any of these desired actions. So as mentioned before, there is a desire to also convert existing objects. So how do you do that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and navigate to my story repository or story modules, and I'm going to click on an existing dashboard. So for this dashboard, you will notice that I'm already benefiting from optimized view mode. So I've enabled it to provide usability and performance improvements to my story viewer. But I, as a story designer, want to make sure there's that seamless transition. So in order to enter Optimized Design Experience, I need to enter edit mode. And we are reloading the story, but once you are within edit mode, you will navigate to the edit story icon under the toolbar. And what we've introduced there is an entry point for you to convert your story into the Optimized Design Experience. So I'm going to go ahead there and click on it. And at this point, you will always be prompted a warning dialog. And the reason for this is because, as mentioned earlier, this is the initial release of the Optimized Design Experience, so there may be features that are unsupported. And something to note is that unlike the Optimized View Mode, the conversion to Optimized Design Experience is permanent. It means there's no way for you to revert this action. In my case, I'm interested and I want to use the Optimized Design Experience, so I'm going to go ahead and click Convert. And as an initial safety net for the Q2 QRC, we are forcing you to do a save as, but please note that this will eventually go away. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK, and you'll notice that my story is being cloned now. And once this migration happens or conversion happens, it's a once-off conversion. So once you are in the Optimized Design Experience, you benefit from being in the Optimized Design Experience. So in this case, you'll notice I start seeing those ghost loading indicators. I'm within edit mode. I can open my designer panel for a specific chart and see the brand new chart building experience. And I can do a seamless transition between edit and view mode. You will now really notice the benefits of Optimized Design Experience and Optimized View Mode, and we look forward to hearing your feedback. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bettina Denonville. I'm a product manager in SAP Analytics Cloud here to present you the new features for Data Analyzer. The first is Data Analyzer is now showing as a table title the description of a BW query or a HANA calculation view instead of the technical ID. This applies to the SAP BW and SAP HANA Live connection. I open a BW Live query and you see that the technical ID is PM Sales Data Supermarket Cont and the name is, the description is PM Sales Data Supermarket. I launch this query and you see that now the query description is shown as a table title. You still always see the technical ID of the query here in the information panel. The same is available for HANA Live. And the second is Data Analyzer can now be launched from a model in SAC. Users can now conveniently open Data Analyzer as a data preview tool directly from a model. Now let me show you the features in SAC. Going to the file repository, here you see the list of models, and now if you open a model, you see that you can directly launch Data Analyzer. That's beneficial for quick data preview instead of creating a story to see the data behind the model. That's it from my side. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Hello everyone, my name is Jie Den. I am Product Manager for SAP Analytics Cloud. Today I would like to introduce the new highlights of the QRC2 release for Analytic Designer. First, as a highlight, with the QRC2 release, Analytic Designer is delivering the optimized view mode. Optimized view mode of Analytic Designer supports the following features. First, the shared widgets like chart or like table, this kind of shared widgets, we're also supporting that on the optimized view mode. So the shared widgets, as in story, are supported in Analytic Designer optimized view mode. And of course, application-specific widgets are also supported in optimized view mode, like a filter line and also like a flow layout panel, these kind of things. Related script APIs and the technical objects are supported. Planning functions and performance features are supported, like loading in background, like pulse refresh. In addition, OData integration and also the post-message embedding embedding capability are also supported within this optimized view time. And filter variables, theme, CSS capability, dynamic layout, PDF export, and bookmarks. These kind of features are all supported with optimized view mode that is delivered with the QRC2 release for Analytics Design. In addition to all of these features, we also add new features on the optimized view mode. Like we provide different GeoMap script APIs that you will be able to use this API to do some get filter options on the GeoMaps. And we also provide sorting and ranking APIs for tables and charts that you can add application runtime to dynamically set the sorting and the ranking for charts and tables. Very important, we also provide custom widget data binding capabilities on optimized view mode. So to more detailed functionality and also restrictions for the optimized view mode, please refer to the detailed documentation. Now I would like to show you the demos for the QRC2 release. So first, I would like to show you the optimized view mode for Analytical Designer. So currently, I have an analytical application that is in the non-optimized mode. So if I want to convert this non-optimized mode analytical application to optimized mode, either I have the option can go to the analytical application details, and then I can click on here to view time optimization. I can save here, or I have the option. Let me first discard. I want to show you another option is to trigger the enable optimized view mode. Just click on that, and then it will be asked whether I want to really convert my application to the optimized mode. I say yes, click on OK. Then this application will be converted to the optimized view mode. So I get the unsupported and deprecated features. It shows me the tables that haven't used optimization presentation. So for that, I first need to turn on my table here to the optimized table. So select this one, optimize the presentation. Then let's save application again here and then we turn on the optimize mode. So we see saving analytical application. Now application is saved in the optimized mode. So on the optimized mode, so let's have a look into how it looks like in the optimized mode for the analytical application. I just go to run the analytical app. We will see the runtime. It will show me basically currently I am in an optimized view mode enabled. So let me show you again. So refresh that again, we will be able to see there's a ghost loading hint in the background. That is exactly the optimized mode for the analytical application. So here for the optimized mode in the analytical application, and all this chart and the table are turned on to the optimized mode, and we also see that for these analytical applications, also our flow layout panel is also turned into the optimized mode, and also I here can, for example, select the input control. I will see this input control is interact with my chart and also the table. So that's currently the analytical application is running on the optimized mode. The next is I would like to introduce the data binding capability for the custom widget. So we already support the custom widget in Analytical Designer. Here we adding a data binding capabilities for the custom widget. Data binding means you can assign an SAC model to the custom widget and configure the data binding via this viewed panel instead of the coding before. And the custom widget data binding is based on the optimized view mode, what I mentioned before. Means if you want to leverage the data binding for custom widget capability, you first need to move your analytical application to the optimized view mode, and then you will be able to leverage, consume the custom widgets that are created with the data binding capability. And we support all the SAC models except the new model. And the custom widget developer needs to implement data binding in the JSON files, in the web component JS files. Once these files are implemented with the data binding capability, and then the custom widget consumer will be able to assign an SAC model or any SAC model to the custom widget, and then just using this build panel to assign measures or dimensions to the custom widget. So with that is much convenient for a custom widget consumer, means application designer to consume custom widgets in analytical applications. As the next, I would like to add a custom widget for the data binding capability into this optimized mode. So I just go to plus clicking and then go to the custom widget, and we would like to here using a eCharts bar ingrained. So I move that to the flow layout panel here, right? So that's exactly maybe the size I want to see this custom widget. Add to the flow layout panel here. So let's configure that. Data binding for the custom widget means I can assign SAC model on it. So let's assign an SAC model for that. Assign the best run model, click on OK. And add measures. So let's see the gross margin. And I would like to add the dimension. For example, would like to add the product dimension. So now you see that this is the custom widget currently added into my design time, and I'm using the build panel to add dimension, add measures from this SAC model assigned to this custom widget. So for that you can see, and for that we can see that this custom widget here is already added into the analytical designer. You see once I click on that, it will be basically has a gradient colors, has the shadows, and I can also zoom this, actually the zoom this bar chart. So what I need to do the next is that I would like to on this custom widget and also on the, for example, on the input control, and to identify the linked analysis to make sure that all the charts or tables or custom widgets are using this data source are connected or linked with this input control. So I click on apply. So let's save this analytical app. And then we go to runtime to rerun that. Okay, you see that here we see that this custom widget is basically added here, and I can move this custom widget and so on. And most important is that the custom widget is also work with my input control. So if I add this California, Nevada, and you see my custom widget also automatically also changes the value for that. And or I can also here for example, to different period, for example, 7 period, look back, and we see here different data. So here we see that on the optimized view mode, we can enable a custom widget and add to it using the data binding. Very convenient. I don't need to write any code. And this custom widget can also interact with my input control like I have already done here. So that's the part for the analytical design optimized view mode and also the custom widget data binding capability. The next, we also provide the input control script API, get active selected member API, and to get the active dimension members. Why it is important? We got after the customer requirements that they would like to retrieve the active selected member from the input control and then pass this member information further to data action or further to do some further data filterings in another chart or in another table. Like in this scenario, you can use different input controls to get active selected member and then pass this information to the data actions that you can more execute your data actions on the content sensitive or content based way. But please note, this API don't support for excluded members that you selected from the input control. And also for performance consideration, we recommend using it for input controls with low cardinality dimensions or turning on cascading effect to narrow down dimension members in input control for performance consideration. So via that scenario, you are much more flexible to define the interactions between input controls and also to other widgets. Okay, the next I would like to show you that the input control script API and also the enhancements. So the scenario is that you see in the design time, here I have the 4 input controls, and then you can always get the active selected members get selected, and then we just pass the selected data and also to the data actions. So have a look into what kind of script are behind these 2 data actions. So within these data actions, I use a script API input control get the active selected members and then pass the selected members to the data actions for the country. So that's the scenario I would like to achieve. So now let's run analytical applications first. And let's enable also let's enable the console log to see. Don't want to. Let's move that. Okay. So what we will do is that to see for the country, we can go. So for example, get active selected. So you see, once I click on that one, and we will be able to see that active selected member Australia and also the Germany. So here between different input control, I have the cascading behavior. So if I, for example, only select Australia, and you see that data has been changed. And or if we get the customer get active selected, then we will see here different data are getting can be retrieved by the script API. So here you are using can use the script API to retrieve the active selected member from this input control, except the excluded member. Okay, so the excluded member are not here, but everything else active select member can be retrieved via the script API get active select member. So now I will basically, so you see that if I only select Australia and also Germany, and for example, if I select a different here 10 period, you see I have cascading behavior. If I deselect September, then it's only Germany is shown in the here in this country are selected for this country input control. So now I would like to show you the next. So I close this console. Now I would like to pass this information from the select country to the data actions. So the data actions, so I pass the information, I pass this country, Germany. For example, I can enter the data. For example, the Germany, I would like to enter the 500. And I can also enter the planning for this Australia, also for the 500. You see, actually I have done the both, right? Then I would like to use the data actions to pass the parameter Germany and then copy the actual version to the planning version. So that's what is data action doing. So let me click on the data action. So now you will see the result. You see, only Germany is the actual 500 is copied also to the planning. They have the same value, but Australia does not copy it. Why? Because in this data action, I pass the parameter from the active selected member from this input control. This input control is only selected is the Germany as an active select member. So only Germany is passed this to this data actions, and also this data action is only executed for the Germany. That's why you see here is copied, but for the Australia here is not copied. So that is exactly the capability for the get active selected members from the input control. From there, you will be able to do either pass to the data action, or you can use this information to concatenate with other information and pass to another chart or another table as a filter. So that's the highlighted features I want to show you with the Analytic Designer delivery for the QRC 2 releases. Thank you for your listening and also attention. The next feature is also very frequently asked by customers, means the calculation input control support in analytical applications. With the QRC 2 release, Application Designer can also now create calculation input control based on the restricted measures. So the scope is the same like a story. That means if you want to create restricted measures, now you can also do that in the analytical applications. And supported widgets are charts, tables, or visualizations, and also value driver trees. And this calculation input control also get analytical designer specific features in the design time, like a design time show and hide for this calculation input control, or you can set the sequence in the outline to the calculation input control, or you can set the styling in the styling panel for this calculation input control. And we also support calculation input control in the pop-up for the theming, and also the script API to set the visibility and also the layout. Now let's have a look into the next features. What I want to introduce is a calculation input control. So with the Analytics Designer, now we also support the calculation input control for the restricted key figures. So here you can already see, and on this chart I created two restricted measure. I want to add another one, for example, create a calculations, define the restricted measures, and also give a name. We just give that gross margin 2017. And for the measures, I would like to define the restricted measure based on the gross margin and also based on the time. And for the time, here the values, I can create new calculation input control. And I just say that's 2017. And here it's important just to select the value. So let's select the members for that. I would like to select 2017. Click on OK, OK, and click another OK. Then we will see that is this restricted measure gross margin 2017 is added into this chart. We can also add it into this. We can also add that also into the table gross margin 2017. And then we see these three restricted measures also in the table or in the chart. And for this particular calculation input control, I can move to that and to make it bigger. And also we can select the different quarters to see the data changes for the gross margin in 2017. Okay, so that's the calculation input control supported in the Analytical Designer. So you define this calculation input control exactly like you define in the story. In addition, what you can do is this calculation input control is also available in this outline. Within the outline, you have the options that to do the show and hide, and also to do your styling. And also you provide related script APIs to set the layout, to set the visibilities to this calculation input control. The next, also very important, now analytical application is also supported on Android mobile app. So now if you are leveraging the Android mobile app on your Android devices, you will also be able to see the analytical applications within your Android mobile app. And there you can launch the analytical app in the Android mobile app, and also from there you can start this analytical application, and there it contains the standard mobile app capabilities like data refresh, etc. In addition, we also deliver a feature that is important for the bookmarks for saving the dynamic variable values. With this enhancement, you will be able to save last selected values for dynamic variables in the bookmark. To be able to do that, we provide you a design time setting. Means in the design time, you will be able to already configure that. Means whether you want to save last selected values in your bookmarks for dynamic variables. So this part is the application designer can already decide for these analytical applications. In addition, and if end user want to decide it, we also provide the script API that application designer can develop the application in that way that the end user has the option to select whether he want to save the last changed values or he want to save the default values. So using this script API, and you will be able to build this kind of drop-down boxes and like a bookmark to keep last selected values. Or you can select yes or no or undefined. If it's undefined, then it will take the design time setting like here. And if they take yes or no, then these runtime settings will override the design time setting. Means if this option is provided to the application consumer, then application consumer has the a decision to decide whether the last selected values for the dynamic variables will be saved in his or her bookmark or not. Otherwise, an application designer can decide it at the application design time. So with that, we provide more flexibility to decide which kind of value should be saved in the bookmarks for the dynamic variables. The next, it's also here improvement for the script performance pop-up. And our script performance pop-up is already delivered to you as customers. With the QRC 2 releases, we give you an easy way to launch this script performance. What we add in the design time is that an option, or in this design time in the toolbar, for analyzes script performance in runtime. If this option is turned on, and then means at the application runtime, you can directly start your application and then using this keyboard combination Ctrl+Shift+A or Ctrl+Shift+Z to trigger this performance measurement pop-up for your script performance. So keep in mind, and with this way, you only need to do a setting in the design time, and then at the runtime, you can very conveniently to trigger this performance pop-up like here, and to analyze your script performance. As a next is also an enhancement for the planning scenario. And once you are doing the planning scenario in an analytical application with the QRC 2 releases, we provide you publish and leave dialog. So once you have start your planning application, and you may enter some data, and then you navigate away from the screen. Once you navigate away, and then a pop-up will be shown, it will ask you whether you want to publish and this data before you leave. So with that, we can guarantee the we can avoid the data lost in the planning scenario. And also you have the option to choose whether you want to enable this pop-up or you want to suppress in this pop-up. So this setting can be done at the design time. So in the design time, in the settings in the canvas, and you will be able to do these settings to enable this pop-up or suppress this pop-up. Default is pop-up is enabled because we want to help you to avoid data lost if your end user consumes the analytical application for doing the planning scenario. But also in some use cases, it might not make sense. So if it does not make sense, this pop-up for you, you have the option in the design time to suppress this dialog. Then your end user will not be seeing this dialog at the application runtime. So last but not least, and we also deliver customization options for the tab strip. So we provide the more advanced CSS capabilities that you will be able to style your tab strip. Like here, we can see that the tab strip can be styled and also with underline and also with some background colors. So here we'll provide a CSS capability for the background color, for the width and the color of the tab's bottom border here, and also the padding for all tabs to enable you to much convenient, flexible to styling your tab strip to make that more user-friendly for your application consumer.
Hello, my name is Gerd Schöffel and I'm a product expert in SAP Analytics Cloud Planning. In this QRC, we generally release the data export service from SAC. It can be used to pull planning and forecasting data from SAC. We can export fact data, master data for public and private dimensions, and audit data. Please note that the solution is only available on Cloud Foundry tenants. The general release also includes the respect for the access privileges and additional performance improvements for larger data models.
Hello, my name is Scott Godfrey, and I'm one of the product managers with SAP Analytics Cloud. And I'm going to spend the next few moments talking to you about some of the new features we're releasing as part of our Q2 2022 QRC release in the planning area. We're going to start off here with the concept of the public dimension parameter for multi-actions. And what this enables is if you have a multi-action that is composed of multiple steps, let's say data action steps, where each of those data actions may reference different models, but where those different models reference a single common public dimension, that public dimension can be defined once as a single parameter, and that parameter can then be passed to the various steps of the multi-action. Of course, as was the case previously, any parameter that's defined could be set to be manually selected by the user at runtime or dynamically linked to various filters within the story. So with that, let's jump over and see the public dimension parameter in action. I have a multi-action here with two steps. The two steps are two separate data actions. The data actions themselves, of course, are operating on different models, but the underlying models referenced by each data action are leveraging the same public entity dimension. So what this is going to allow me to do is create a single parameter that I can pass through the data action where the entity dimension is involved. So if I just look at the parameter that I have for the multi-action, we have this new cross-model parameter. Of course, I've chosen the entity dimension. Within each data action, there's also a corresponding entity dimension that can be passed through. If I then pivot this over to my story, of course, I have my multi-action trigger. It's going to prompt for the entity dimension. And again, this is going to be a shared parameter that's going to pass through to these two underlying data actions, which are performing currency conversion in each model. One is calculating my sales, the other is converting some OPEX to my USD equivalent. So if I just go ahead and run that, again, it prompts me for the shared entity dimension, the parameter, the single parameter that I'm going to pass through. Previously, I would have had to do this in two separate parameters for the entity dimension. I'll go ahead and run that. And yes, in each model now, I get my corresponding converted amount. So that's the public dimension parameter for multi-actions available with our Q2 release. With this release, we've introduced the concept of data locking aware data disaggregation. And what that means is if you have data locking enabled for your model and choose to enable this new toggle, you can then enter data at aggregate or parent nodes, even where the underlying child or leaf nodes have a mixed lock state. So for example, if I had a 2022 full year value and I had locked Q1 for that, I could still then enter the full year value for 2022 and it would apportion the differential over the open periods, that is Q2 to Q4. So let's navigate over and see this in practice. Okay, just to illustrate how this disaggregation respecting data locks will function. So the first thing you have to note is that to enable this, you have to set a toggle within the model preferences. In the planning section, there's a new subsection for data disaggregation, and you have two options. First is based on data locking. Okay, that's the one we want to enable. Now, my user right here is not an admin, so it's already enabled in this. I could disable it if I was an admin, but I want this toggle enabled. There's also a second toggle for based on validation rules. Now, the validation rules toggle should be enabled by default. This is the way the behavior was before. You couldn't actually disable it, right? If you enter data in aggregate level, it would automatically disaggregate to the valid combinations. So this toggle actually allows you now to disable that behavior if you wanted to, but the expectation is that you would keep this enabled. If we then move over to our story and see how this works in practice, you'll see here that I have a full year for 2021. I've locked periods 1 to 3, so Q1, right? Periods 4 to 12 are of course open, right? I could of course change values here. The version will go into edit. Right? Of course, I can't make any changes to the locked periods unless I was to ignore the data locks. But what's new here and what didn't exist before is when I had a mixed state of data locks. So leaves, any single leave was in a locked state, but other leaves were, or other children were not locked, right? The parent would, by definition, become locked, right? It was in a mixed state, it would become locked. But you'll see here now that that the parents are unlocked, meaning that I can enter data to the parent, the full year in this case. It will keep the locked periods. It will respect the locked values in the existing locked periods, and it will spread the differential over the remaining open periods. So if I were to, for example, change the R300 bike to 2500, you'll see that the period 1 to 3 values were locked, and the differential is spread over the remaining periods. So this is the data disaggregation respecting data locks that's releasing with our Q2 QRC release. Next, I want to introduce our new data entry mode called Fluid Data Entry. Fluid data entry allows for rapid data changes with limited blocking or delays during the update process. It enables planners to enter data sequentially into multiple cells without any noticeable delay. It will wait for a user pause in the update before it sends the information to the server and does recalculation of other story widgets and the table. In effect, this allows data entry performance similar to mass data entry, while allowing interactivity with a table and story similar to the single data entry mode. Okay, so let's see fluid data entry in practice. Now the first thing to note is that fluid data entry option does not appear unless I have the optimized presentation enabled for the given table that I'm working on. So I have to enable the optimized presentation toggle. I can then select the default data entry to be fluid data entry if I wanted to do that. But what we'll do is we'll walk through the 3 different data entries to see the difference. Starting with standard data entry, when I update a given cell, it sends the data to the server, does a recalculation, and recalculates all corresponding widgets on the canvas. Now the challenge with this is that it's very slow to enter multiple cells in sequence, right? But I still do get my interactive capabilities with the table. If I were to switch over to mass data entry, the first data update takes me into MDE, and I can then quickly enter multiple cells in sequence without any lag. The challenge is that I lose my interactive capabilities with the table. So I can't drill, I don't have my typical right-click menu, and I need to either process the data or exit the mass data entry mode to get back to my typical interactive capability within the story. So when I process the mass data entry mode, of course, it will send all the information to the server, recalculate the model, and re-render all the widgets in the story. In fluid data entry, I can enter my data in sequence much like the mass data entry. It will wait for a pause before it does the recalculation. If I then pause, you'll see that it will send the data to the server. It will recalculate the widgets. And the nice part here is that I still have my right-click menu. I can still drill or collapse a table, right? All the typical interactive functions with the table are available to me. Also, if I just pull up the change history for the version, you'll note that when I make a change using fluid data entry, it's batched like mass data entry. So I can revert all the most recent updates that I've made prior to the last update with fluid data entry. Okay, so this is the fluid data entry feature available with our Q2 QRC release. So this quarter in the area of plan process management, we've made some enhancements to our task wizard. When you're generating tasks, using the task wizard, you can now do this without having pre-created an overall process. You can define the start and end dates for the process and process hierarchy. You can define additional context filters that will be generated for each of the tasks. You can populate the description field, and you'll have additional expand and collapse capabilities when you're previewing the process hierarchy. Okay, just to illustrate some of the changes to the task wizard in the calendar. First and foremost, I now have the ability to select the task wizard without having an existing process. So previously, I had to have a process already defined. I'd have to select that in order for this element to become available for selection. If I do have an existing process, it'll automatically inherit characteristics of that, right? When I select that and use the generate events. If I don't, right, it'll assume I want to create a new process with child events. So I'm going to quickly add the parameters that are required for the model and the driving dimension, These have not changed. But what is new here is the ability for me to add additional filters. So I, of course, may have a specific selection in my work file if I were to assign one. I get, of course, a driving dimension that's passed to as a filter to the given event. But I can also define other filters. So in this case, if I, for example, only want to plan for racing bikes, I could do that here. In step 4, in addition to defining the event name, I now have the ability to define a description which will propagate to any of the events that are created. And then finally, in step number 5, whereas previously to see all the tasks and processes that will be created, I had to manually drill up and down in the hierarchy, I now have the ability to expand and collapse all, so I can quickly drill down to see everything that will be created. So these are the changes that are introduced to the Task Wizard as part of our Q2 2022 QRC release. We've introduced the concept of assignee support for automatic calendar tasks. So if you are defining a data action, multi-action, or data locking task in the calendar, you now have the ability as the owner to set a different assignee. This could be useful in a scenario where the owner doesn't have the correct authorizations to execute that task. So you can set an assignee who does have appropriate authorizations to execute the task. And when you do that, that assignee will receive a request for approval to let them know that the job will execute under their ID. Once they approve that and the start conditions for the task are met, then the task will automatically execute. Now, just to illustrate the ability to request an alternate assignee for an automated calendar task, I'm going to start by generating the task. And now I have the ability in the assignee section, I hover over this, you'll see that it tells me that adding someone other than myself will request their agreement to run the task using their permissions. Now, the reason I want to do this is that I need to schedule the task, but I know I don't have the authorizations to execute the task. So, of course, I'm going to go ahead and request that an alternate user, another ID that I have, is going to be the assignee for the task. Once I've done that, I can click the Update button. It still has not made the requisition yet. Right? It's just saving the task for now. But once that's complete, I now have this Start Permission request. When I click that, it's going to add an alternate task or add the task to the assignee's calendar as well and make a requisition of them for approval, as well as temporarily locking this until that approval occurs. So when I click OK here, what happens is this task will go into hold mode pending the approval from my other ID, the assignee. What I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and I will approve that using my other ID. And what we'll see is we get a toast message saying that your task has been resumed. And then the task status will change if I just do a refresh here, and we'll see that the task status is now open. And the task will run under my other ID when the start condition is met. We've introduced the idea of conditional dependencies for calendar tasks. So these dependencies can now be defined as start conditions by the process owner or task owner. So for example, if we want to define an assignee task, then set a review task that's dependent on the completion of the assignee task, and then set a data locking task or data action task that's dependent on completion of the review task, we can now do that. So we have the ability to set child events to start at the same time as their parent processes start, or to define dependencies between sibling tasks, so those tasks that have the same parent process. So let's navigate over and see this in practice. To illustrate the conditional dependencies, you'll see that I have a process hierarchy in my calendar. I have an initial set of tasks that are related to updating plan assumptions, specifically a task for update the plan assumptions, review the plan assumptions, then a data locking task that will lock the plan assumptions. And then I have a broader sales plan, which will be available once the plan assumptions are complete. So the key here is that my review plan assumptions now becomes dependent. The start of it becomes dependent on the assignee task or update plan assumptions, and that assignee task is accomplished or successful. Likewise, my lock plan assumptions is dependent on the review task. And the sales plan itself, the availability of the broader sales plan, is dependent on the completion of the update plan assumptions, right? So the key here is I can set these condition for start based on the dependency of another task, achieving a status of another task. And one of the things I would just highlight here is that in order to do that, each task that you want to make dependent on another task, those tasks need to be siblings. So I can relate these three items because they're siblings, and sales plan can be related to assumptions because they're also siblings. So let's walk through this process. I've, for simplicity, assigned myself as the assignee for each of these. If I submit the update plan assumptions, then the review plan becomes available, it is open because I've accomplished the preceding task. I'll go ahead and approve the review plan assumptions. When that happens, we'll see that the locking task will kick off. It's in process. You'll see I'll get a toast notification in a moment that the locking task is complete. It's a data locking task, an automated data locking task. And then when this refreshes, you'll see that my sales plan is now in progress. In this release, we've introduced some enhancements to the version management panel, specifically to enable visibility into version size and record visibility. So now when you're making changes to your version, you can see version size information for public and private versions. You can see the number of visible records for versions in which you may not have full access. So there might be data access control. So how many records do you have visible versus the total number in the version? You can see the number of editable records if you're working in a private version with a planning area enabled. And you also have the ability to see the number of changed records. So the number of records you've changed, both in aggregate within the version panel on the version details, or if you look at the history panel, you can see the individual record changes based on the particular operations that you performed on that version. So with that, let's jump over to SAP Analytics Cloud and see some of these changes. Okay, here I've got my version management panel on the right, my target version. It's not in edit mode currently. If I make a change to February, changes to 800 million. Of course, what happens is the target version does go into edit mode. We'll see that the edit mode is limited. Of course, that's because I have a planning area defined. What I can do at this point is if I click the three dots and I click the details, I'll see the size of the version. The size of the version is 93,000 records, but I can also click the show details. And when I do that, I'll see how this version, or what this version is composed of. That is public version of 75,000 records. Of course, records outside of the scope of what I'm editing here, specifically outside of 2021. The planning area itself, 19,000 records, and the number of records that I've edited. If it's less than 1,000, I just see fewer than 1,000. I won't see a specific number. So these are the details for this version. If I just close that and I copy the target version, if I were to do the same thing and click the details here, I would see that this version is composed of 19,000 records, which default based on the planning area. And of course, I've also made no changes to this version. So these are the changes to the record visibility, or the version management and record visibility with the Q2 2022 QRC release.
Hi, my name is Jeanne Biconnet, and I'm a product manager for SAP Analytics Cloud, here to present the new features for Microsoft Office integration. We provide the support for a new cell-based custom formula named SAP.OVERWRITEDIMENSION. User can overwrite the selection of members for any dimension positioned in filter area or in row or column axis of a table. that will allow to synchronize several tables or worksheets like balance sheet, income statement at once with same dimension value through, for example, a first initialization worksheet in the workbook. Of course, this use case is valid for both reporting and planning scenarios. Next, we provide the ability to transport a Microsoft Excel workbook across tenants. This is really important for enterprise readiness. Indeed, in an enterprise environment, workbooks are usually tested on a test tenant. After a successful test, a power user would need to transport the workbook to a productive environment. Of course, the assumption here is that the same model is available in the productive tenant as well. With Smart Copy and Paste functionality, we provide the capability for users to copy a table definition and paste it to another sheet within the same workbook. The functionality is offered within the ribbon toolbar in a new menu named Copy Table with its option Copy Table, Paste Table. Last, with this new release, we extend the prompt capability as users can now design workbooks with prompt screens to define restriction on additional data source as Data Warehouse Cloud. And also, user can choose to type in data or use the member selector menu to make their selection. Prompt can be used for individual tables or complete workbook. This concludes the presentation of the new features for Microsoft Office integration. Thanks for your attention.
Hopefully our demos have shown you how to leverage the latest features of SAP Analytics Cloud for your organization. Remember to leave a like on this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date on everything SAP Analytics Cloud. We're excited for what's to come for the rest of 2022, and we hope to see you throughout the year with all the latest updates for SAP Analytics Cloud. Until next time.